So as we just got through moving out of Passover, going in accordance here with my teachings, we're going to back up because this lesson actually, we read this in the Torah before we get to Passover, but it's in the order of events from Passover to the day of Shavuot, which would be the day of Pentecost. So I'm going to teach this part here. Parashat Jethro, which is the book of Jethro. To the Jew first, then the Gentile, Romans 1:16. So as we think of the Exodus, or the way it's even portrayed in the movies, we think of, just being the story of Moses leading the Jews out of Egypt. The original Passover, we have the same idea. It's all the Jewish families are putting blood over the door and protecting themselves during the first Passover, or the first Passover Seder. While they're safe inside their homes, this again is the story, but it's still not actually factual. But it's made up of the mixed multitude. The invitation was sent out to all of Israel. Anyone that wanted to leave in the Exodus and anyone that wanted protection from death on the Passover was invited to take part of the Passover Seder. So first, the conditions were they had to enter into the home of a Jew. They had to take part of the Passover Seder, the covering of the blood, and they also had to swear allegiance to follow the God of Israel, or they had to have the want to follow the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to do so, they had to also be circumcised to come into the Abrahamic covenant. So in fact, the Exodus actually consists of 3 million people leaving Egypt, with 2.4 million of them being non-Jewish. This is the mixed multitude. In one of the midrashes, Rabbi Yochanan says that the mixed multitude outnumbered the Jews. The fact is, the Passover and the freedom to salvation was always intended for all people. It was for all people to be brought into God's people, into the house of Israel. So 2.4 million converts entered the covenant, becoming part of the Jewish people to be the nation of Israel, the grafting in of the Gentiles, Romans 11:11, Romans 11:18. Everyone who wanted to come into the covenant was counted as a Jew. They were the children of Israel. They were proselytes, fellow citizens. Ephesians 2:19, Romans 11, Romans 11:25. The mixed multitude, according to Jewish tradition, they were accepted by Moses as an integral part of Judaism, or an integral part of the people, I should say. So how much so? From the moment that Moses met with God and he directed him at the burning bush to go and get his people out of Egypt and bring them back to Mount Sinai to worship him, by entering into a covenant, a renewed covenant of the Torah, the pivotal and quintessential point of Judaism, to adhere to the given law. So that brings us to where we're at. We find that when we reach the reading of the giving of the law at Mount Sinai, we find it in Parashat Jethro. It's called the book of Jethro in the Tanakh, in the Jewish readings. They're broke up into different books, and this book is the book of Jethro, where there's a giving of the law. Jethro being Moses' father-in-law. So after all the events surrounding the Exodus, after they cross the Red Sea and they have a battle with the Amalekites, I think, Jethro hears all of this. Most of all the nations have been hearing of all the miracles that had happened in Egypt and throughout the desert. So Jethro becomes convinced that the God of the Jews was the true God, and he came to the desert to convert with Moses and them. So we see in the story that Jethro eventually sees Moses struggling with keeping up with all the people, and that Moses wouldn't be available for like receiving prophecy and things like that, in general, for personal service to God. So Jethro is actually credited with giving Moses the system of the judges. It's also the creation of what becomes the Sanhedrin. And First Chronicles actually informs us that Jethro's descendants are alluded to in the prophets as being the sages who learned Torah who were part of the Sanhedrin. So, why is this important? Because Jethro was a pagan Gentile priest. He observed all the pagan worships of all the different nations. And according to some, he's actually the advisor together with Balaam and Job to Pharaoh. And Jethro, who actually has many names, but one of his main names actually interprets into beloved or God, beloved by God, or God's beloved. The Midrash also teaches that Jethro derives from the word Yetor, which means extra. And an entire extra passage was added to the Torah on this account. So with the central event of Jethro being the giving of the law, which Jewish sages teach us is the entire reason God created the world in the first place, we read from the Zohar that Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, ruler of Midian, and idolater for excellent, must convert and join the Jewish people before God could give the Torah to the people. Every nation of the world would enter into the covenant of Abraham and then into the covenant with God at the foot of Mount Sinai. This is Colossians 2:17. We read other commentaries, Ramna Baka's commentary, that the portion of Jethro's conversion is the report of the giving of the law is a reminder that eventually the Torah will become the property of all mankind and God's name will be known throughout the world. That's Isaiah 2:3, Psalms 22:27. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and the families of the nations shall worship before you. So the actual entire creation and foundation of Judaism begins with mainly foreign nation people, Gentiles, that form Judaism, and the giving of the law, as I said, quintessential point of being Jewish is given in the book of a Gentile, and he's the reason that the Sanhedrin's created. These are the priests over Judaism. You can see that this always was meant to be Jew and Gentile, one religion, one thing. Judaism was never supposed to branch off and become separate as Christianity. It's to be fulfilled with Yeshua. It's to bring in the Gentiles after Yeshua, but we see this in the Old Testament. It was always the same pattern and the same conclusion. So anyways, hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully it reaches whoever it's got to reach. I hope it blesses some of y'all and gives you a better understanding of the Old Testament, the Torah, Judaism, and Christianity. Please click like and share, and I'll see you next time.